We'll call our regular meeting to order and start with comments from the public regarding items that are not on the agenda. Any comments? All right, seeing none, we will move on to, we're already on agenda item 4, amendments to the agenda.
So
David, do we have
the only
any?
amendment we have is we had no personal action under executive session. I just wanted to be clear about that. We did have both legal and collective bargaining.
Great.
Everything else is there.
All right, and actually, do we need to amend the agenda?
For an executive session
at the end?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
so we will amend the agenda for a brief executive session at the end. And we'll go to agenda item number 5, an update on the current status of the Methadone clinic.
So I just want to give the board and the public a quick update on where we are regarding the Methadone clinic from 2 perspectives. One where we are with the pending appeal. Our appeal still is in process. We most recently have supplied our attorney with items requested, which is part of what they call the discovery process, and so we have done that and complied. Our attorney is in the process of submitting that information that was requested. And currently the Methadone clinic sounds to be that it continues to be in the process to open. They are awaiting, I was informed, very respectful from Todd Senebert, that they are waiting a federal sign-off, and they're hoping for within the next couple of weeks, they say mid-August, or it could be slightly later, for an opening. And again, I just want to update people on that. With regard to safety, I want to be clear about what some of the things that we have done as a result, what I would say, of campus safety. I reported to the board some time ago about this and have had it on the agenda, as we've had that on our agenda for a good number of meetings. 400 Dorset is that blue house that's located closest to Dorset Street. And we will be moving our facility staff there along with our security staff, a security staff member, I should say. We are working to add some additional lighting in and around that location and the north side of the Tuttle Middle and the northwest side, and increasing some lighting in that area. Our administrators will be meeting, that's particularly the high school and middle school administration will be meeting to discuss other school safety related issues around just informing our students, again, a reminder of safe passage, late at night, again, just general, all appropriate protocol. We are looking currently at still the kind of the camera cost. We will be running technology over to that building so it can connect to our infrastructure. We're waiting on kind of camera costs, looking at that, as well as doing some cleaning around the area. As you've noticed, those of you who haven't, we've cleaned up our property between the middle school and Dorset Street, that beautiful woods. We've tried to be mindful of the animals that live in there, but we've also tried to be open that up where we can see a little bit better. And that will continue also on the north side of the property on the middle school as well, for a variety of reasons, but certainly security is a main one. And then I will be having a meeting with the city folks, that obviously city management, to talk about other things that we can do collaboratively together to get their possible assistance. Along with the cameras, there's also these poll stations. We've gotten some preliminary numbers on that. They're fairly expensive. These are the alarm stations that you see at a lot of the college campuses. And so there's a variety of options that exist there. And I made no decision on that at this point because of just trying to firm up, how that would be managed. And so that will be part of my conversation with the city. So anyway, that's my update regarding the Methadone clinic and safety, campus safety.
Also add that we're going to be meeting with the city folks regarding the zoning effort and having a safety zone around the different schools, and that's been scheduled for later this month.
Thanks, Martin.
And David, is there any planned communication to parents and students prior to the start of school?
Not yet. I haven't thought that through. I'll be doing that, and we'll need to do that and be ready to go with the administrators as they send out, kind of that information to their parents, to the parents and guardians. I haven't done that again. This response came back from Todd. He's been good about responding, but he just came back. As of today, that was the update around the awaiting federal sign off from DC. So that's kind of where that is. But I will be putting something together. I think it's very important that we're informative, and again, I think this meeting is important to that as well.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. All right, we'll shift into agenda item number 6, the superintendent report. Looks like we have some new people to meet.
Yes, and so I'll kind of skip around a little bit. I got it kind of outlined in my report, but first I would like to welcome a couple new faces. Actually, they aren't really new already because they've been working hard, both of them. And so Karen Dancher, our new Human Resource Director. Karen.
Welcome, Karen.
We're happy to have her. We're going to hear from her a little bit later. She's going to help me with one of the items that we have on here. But again, I'm really, really happy to have her on board. As you've heard, the board has heard, I've told her about this, that there's been a fair number of things that when the HR director gets on board, we're going to start to work in some of these areas. So I'm very happy with her joining our team. In addition, Rhonda Kurtner, our new Nutritional Service Director. Rhonda, welcome. And she is going to be sharing with you information about our nutrition service fund as well here in just a little bit. So welcome to both of you. Number 2, I'm going to skip to 2 on the elevator. We're still awaiting a final sign off on that. Actually, I watched John wander the hall before we started this evening to push the button, thinking that maybe they got it done today, but it should be at any time. We hope that they'll have that done, and so we're happy to have that hopefully resolved very soon. I wanted to report to the board about the high school and the Tuttle Middle School chemical cleanout situation. We await company to assist us. I think it's Friday, John, is that right? Is it this Friday? Clean out there. So we've identified chemicals that really should no longer be on our premises and therefore are going to be removing them. Again, it was a very good process. Important to note that we volunteered for this. And again, they're really trying to work hard to establish some protocols within the state around how to do this. Again, things that we have on hand that we really don't need anymore or more than we have on hand. I think importantly, it's not just about the cleanup, it's also about protocol and procedures moving forward around an articulation of what you have on hand, how much you should have on hand, and who's the caretaker of that information is, I think, some really important move forward information that's going to help us.
Do we have a process in place that we do an annual inventory?
We have had, I would say, nothing that I have seen or requested, so I think the answer to that is no. What we've typically done is our annual inventory essentially has been probably more around budget time frame when we reorder supplies, but maybe don't necessarily, and again, I don't know this for the fact, but we don't necessarily haven't gone into the chemicals and maybe say, do we need any of that? Now, I will say I want to give kudos certainly to John and his staff for really shepherding this, but certainly Tony Canizaro, one of our chemistry teachers, was instrumental in the process, as well as Amelia Lutz, a science teacher here at the middle school. Both were on site a good chunk of the time and I think benefited and helped a lot. And so we're moving through that process.
So when you say we volunteered, what is that?
Well, part of, Vermont School Board's Insurance Trust, part of, again, I give credit to Win on this, particularly around safety and security. It's not just about, an outside a threat coming in. It's sometimes about what you have in your buildings. And so this has been part of, our work as well. And so as a result of that, and some of the work that we've done in support for the state kind of safety and security and crisis planning, we were able to garner this team of folks that came in to do this. And again, I was around for it, particularly when things were identified that there were concerns. But I'm very happy that they came, and I think we're going to move ahead with in a good manner to be on top of this.
So it sounds like, David, there will be some kind of protocol.
There absolutely will be. I mean, that's part of the requirement right now. It will be that, our follow-on will be that there's going to be, somebody who will be in charge, and that will need to be submitted and on hand. And, fire folks were around, and how we mark cabinetry so that when if there is a fire, they know how to go into those locations and all the right markings. So,
David, has there been an assessment of whether all the materials that are there need to be there at all?
Yeah, that's really what I think was most instrumental, is that they kind of talk about of the things that you need to do in a chemistry lab, for instance. When do you need them, and what does it look like kind of in the profile throughout the year, so that you have on site at the right time, and then by the year's end you're really at complete depletion, if you will.
I wouldn't be surprised if you discovered some stuff in there that you never use at all.
Yeah, very, very clear. There was definitely some of those things, and the cabinetry that we had again was locked and was in locked rooms and so on, but not necessarily in the right cabinetry. Wood partitions you might think would be good, but really aren't good, and so there was a lot of, I think, just good information that we learned from. But again, it's not just about the clean out, it's also about the process and protocol for moving forward. So I feel good about that. John?
This was a program, it's called Integrated Chemical Management, done by the EPA.
Mm-hmm.
And the senior scientist from Boston came here and had done all the Boston schools over the last number of years. And we're the third high school and middle school, third district, to have them come in and look at our chemicals and clean things up. So I have an information sheet on what they did, if that would help, because it really it was free.
Yeah, we had a lot of people around. Part of that was to help Visbit and their folks figure out how they're going to continue this effort, because obviously it wouldn't make sense for them, the EPA folks, to be coming to do every school. So there was a lot of eyes on how to do it, what they're doing, how they're dividing, how they're doing all of the process. So it was well done.
Is that something, John, that can be sent out to other schools in the area that maybe didn't? Take advantage?
Absolutely, and that was really the involvement of the Vermont management team. I'm not getting the right name, and Visbit's desire is that there was a lot of pictures being taken and notes being taken by their teams, and we're happy to help this at other schools as well. So well done.
Yeah, great, good job, thank you.
And I want to move back up to number 5, the request for a proposal for the direct inspection and evaluation. I did provide the board with an audit, and I don't necessarily think you may not want to go into great detail now, but one of the things that I did is, this was one of the areas that I asked Karen to assist with. Mm-hmm. And this is a follow-up from our conversation, but what you have in front of you in this proposal is really looking at what are the student outcomes that we're looking for? What is the Danielson current teacher evaluation? Where is there a match? And then how could we have the evidence from the evaluations collected? And so as we have this done by an individual who would come in through an RFP, they would clearly be able to say, here are the student outcomes, here are the teacher expectations, and where do they match, and what does it look like? Now, obviously, there's pure data that what we would obviously have available, number of teachers in the evaluation cycle, how many being done. Those are kind of certainly essential pieces of this as well. But before I went out and just sent out an RFP, again, I did solicit the help of Karen, and Karen asked an awful lot of questions, and so this is the current kind of thinking that I think will be very helpful to the process. So what I would say is it is in my report. If you'd like to talk more about it, I can schedule it for another meeting. If you think it makes sense to you, I could put an RFP together and have it ready for the 21st with feedback from you. Again, I want it to be a useful process. I know you do as well. Again, I think this is beginning to get at that. So let me stop and take your questions.
Let me ask just one question. So the teacher expectations that are listed in this document, those are already evaluated through the Danielson system, is that right?
Correct. The Danielson system is divided, it has 4 domains. Within every domain, there's components within every domain. We don't necessarily hit on every single component of every domain in a single evaluation. For instance, under instruction, there's a component in instruction that says engaging students in learning, and there's a rubric specifically to that, from the unsuccessful to the extremely successful. But there is making some linkage here then about the student outcomes in our ends to the Davison.
Right.
So that's the parallel that we're looking at.
Right, and I guess the next question I'd have is this comprehensive enough, or do we need to add some teacher expectations to make sure that we are, capturing what we need to know, for instance, for disposition for lifelong learning? Are there additional things that we need to capture? Part one of my question. Part two is, if there is, what does that entail? I mean, is that something we have to work with the association, I assume, to modify the evaluation? Is that right?
Yeah, we would definitely have to do that. I do think that under our current ends, again, we have been collecting data on our current ends, and again, that's part of what I'd like to see us happen. So we have our identified ends. There's far more subcomponents than what you see there around the definition of our ends and those certain components, the 4 areas. So I'd like to just see that connection is what I'm really trying to get at. And again, Karen helped me with that.
But so, I mean, but are we going to need to add additional teacher expectations to make sure we're comprehensively measuring whether what we're evaluating the teachers on are sufficient to help us meet those ends?
I think it's a good point. I don't know. I think that's part of what we would get out of this, probably, is that there isn't enough clarity, or we need to be more precise in our ends, so that we're being able to target our teacher evaluation system specifically to that.
Right.
In academic proficiency, these are the ones that are most critically aligned to that in the evaluation.
Yeah, and I guess
under instruction, under 3C, engaging students, or
right. But I guess for an RFP, I mean, what I understood we were trying to look at is how we are currently evaluating our teachers and whether we're doing a good job. That's one issue. The other issue is, how do we modify how we're evaluating the teachers to make sure it's going into feeding our achievement goals. And is that too much for this one RFP, or is this all something, because we're getting into it, we need to push off to another meeting because it?
Well, again, I think it's good. It's good discussion. Again, I don't want to have one without the other, right? Obviously, teacher evaluation is specific to student outcomes. Ends are important to us. I think there's enough clarity in this first go round. Again, let me take a shot at putting an RFP together that would, if you were the outside individual who would respond, let me try to provide enough clarity where they could come in and look at what we're asking them to do. So that would be my suggestion, or we can put this on the 21st for a more in-depth discussion, and you'll have a chance to kind of peruse it and read it a little bit more. I don't know what your pleasure would be, Elizabeth.
Yeah, the way that we approached it before is we did have a 2-person board subcommittee working on the initial draft of the RFP. So that would be another option if it's the board's pleasure. I know I was one of those members, but Rich Cassidy was the other one. So I would be happy to continue that work with another board member, or we can look at it a different way. I will say, Martin, to your specific question, the RFP was intended to look at the current evaluation system. It was intended to identify gaps. So in some ways, the document we're looking at here is linking ends to current evaluation system. So it gives the framework to identify gaps, but that would have to be spelled out in the RFP.
Okay.
But I guess
I'd be happy to help you, Elizabeth, if you want to.
Well, do you think that's the best next step, David, in terms of helping your work, or?
Yeah, and it might be, also just about having clarity on the RFP kind of draft. I mean, if this was really kind of the audit form, the thinking, the critical thinking, if you will, that was going to help us write the RFP. And again, I give Karen credit for helping me with this. I think it would be good, so Elizabeth and Diane, to take this, look at it, work with us around kind of the framing of the RFP, specifically from kind of the gap, that gap analysis that we may have.
Well, would it make more sense for a board subcommittee to look at a draft RFP after the fact? Because we did have that initial meeting.
I'm fine
and
with that
obviously
too.
some work has been done here. Would the board agree that that would be an effective way to move forward? Okay.
Fine. So we'll ready that draft.
So your team will look at drafting an RFP, and then the board subcommittee can kind of review that and give an idea of time frame. Or
Let me look and try to be sensitive to all the things that are going on with what I know. So I'll connect with both of you, and obviously Karen's been helping me on this too, so I'll need to connect with her on that. Karen, I don't know if you wanted anything to add to that. I mean, from your perspective.
We were trying to link what is actually out there already, and it's hard to make a leap to the future without actually knowing where you are right now.
Yeah, this is great work in terms of linking ends to the current evaluation system, and it's the platform off of which the RFP could certainly be written. Good. Any other comments? Great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you'll get back to us on a time frame.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Financial results.
Yes.
One little bullet point.
So again, kind of the preliminary financial results John has put together for you. Again, this is just a capture. As we end our year, John has done a preliminary kind of look at that, and we have approximately $266,000. And again, I think it's really, really important for people to understand on a $43 million budget, $266,000 that would be carried forward into the 2015 school year is very, very close to zero. And but that is where we currently stand. I don't know if the board has any particular questions on kind of the quick summary that John has provided. I'm happy to take those. And again, thanks to John for putting this together.
To that end, David or John, do you feel that it would be appropriate to establish some kind of a benchmark or a goal in terms of that, not so much the carry forward, but I've seen other school districts operate with substantially significant deficits, and that's obviously not a position we want South Burlington to be in. But the flip side is this is kind of a break-even year is what it boils down to. But there probably ought to, or I guess my question is, should there be a level that is considered break-even? Is it 0.5%? Is it?
Yeah. I have not been in a district that has ever done that. I would like to enter into that type of a conversation and establish that. I think that from the majority of our public, they think zero is best. But on a $43 million budget, zero is not prudent, probably, from the perspective of financial and fiscal management. And so I think it makes good sense for us. And I also think, as your superintendent, I don't know. Some of you might say that is a lot of money, but some of you may say that's cutting it way too close. So I think it would be helpful for me to have, if it's 0.5%, is the targeted goal for year end, then we could work from that. And therefore that essentially is, we met our desired target. So I think it would be good to have that discussion. We've talked in the past about a capital debt, a capital reserve fund, and establishing an amount that would always be there and those types of things. So I think it would be prudent to have that conversation or to establish that target. John?
We operate a little bit differently than, let's say, the city of South Burlington or any municipality. A rule of thumb is 5% of revenues should be held in reserve. So, 5% of our revenue would be $2 million. But we also operate under the state tax program where the law says any excess needs to be used as a revenue in an upcoming budget, or unless it's held in reserve for a capital or it's included for the voters. So having a goal of a fund balance is fine, but we won't be able to ever maintain an ongoing fund balance, let's say, like a municipality can. So it's a bit different.
Okay. Well, in terms of, and I guess my question is, it doesn't sound like it's a policy issue. It's maybe more of a practice issue from a district leadership standpoint. But I also think it's critical that we communicate both, you know, the as we do with the financial results on a monthly basis going on as we roll out a fiscal year, but also the liabilities. If we're going to have a carry forward, that we also in the absence of the budget process, we won't have identified the uses of revenues yet. But we do know we have some outstanding areas like the underfunded pension plan, nutritional services deficit. We know we've got Act 150 tuition students that may negatively impact revenue. So we do have a bucket of, I won't call them liabilities, but potential uses of those revenues from a carry forward basis.
That are on the didn't manifest themselves in 13, but will in the future.
Correct.
Or didn't, they did make, retirement obviously did, and nutritional services did, but we still have to deal with them. Right, yes.
So John, did I understand correctly that we really can't end up anywhere than zero in the budget standpoint?
Unless it's a reserve that's
reserved for a specific need? Yes. To me, the main thing here is that we have a process that doesn't surprise us with year-end shortfalls of any significance. That's the main thing. So I think the question would be what devices and mechanisms are available to avoid such a thing, you know, that are within whatever the law constrains it to be.
We've had to, I would say that even now the budget is tighter because we had quite an increase last year and quite a cutback in staff. So the 2014 budget will be a little bit harder to maintain if we have an emergency. So it's a balance of getting enough contingent fund in an operating budget so you prepare for an emergency.
Consistent with whatever the guidelines are for meeting laws and accounting requirements.
That was initially kind of the idea around the capital reserve fund. You know, prior to us having a facility stewardship plan, I mean, we really didn't have any way of saying, you know, on every year basis, you know, what we might need. And the establishment of the facility stewardship plan was that now, in fairness to John and the facility folks, we now we know our kind of upcoming liabilities, roofs, boilers, air handlers, buses, etc. And so I think it may be advantageous at times where those are some of the highest volatility. When some of those things go, they cost us money, which then just affect our budget. So the establishment of sometimes the capital reserve fund of whatever amount, which goes towards that, would help us keep our other operating budget, I think, in a much more level way. If the board's interested in us exploring that kind of thought process, then I'd be happy to, you know,
I would
move forward.
Before you're looking at whatever devices you have that might be able to mitigate against unforeseen disaster and from a budget standpoint.
Yeah. Is this part of the scope of the longer-term financial planning group?
Well, it has been. It's certainly on our topic. It's a desired outcome of you know, kind of financial stewardship, if you will, moving the district forward. And part of that is when we look at the financial piece, it's all of the facilities plus all of the other, you know, components that make up, you know, our district. So it's all of it together. It's easy to highlight on the facility side just because everybody gets the fact that, you know, things mechanically fail. And therefore, when they fail, they cost a lot of money. And if we had a fund balance or a dedicated fund, then obviously it would come out of that. And then whatever money that we have at year end, an amount would go to replenish that. So again, that's a part of the desired outcome. Again, we've had that for a long time. Way back when you started, Elizabeth, the facility stewardship plan, which was talked about and then finally developed, that was essentially trying to get at some control measures.
Peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there would be an interest from the board to really revisit either through the financial planning committee or separately the idea and timeliness of a capital reserve fund at some point. Is that Martin, Diane?
Yeah, and anything else that might be
Any other mechanisms?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Did you want to add
I just
anything,
want to
John?
say that this was kind of a snapshot. We have an in-depth report coming on policy 2.4 in September to give you the full, and we included there.
Yeah.
And we our citizen group has been a little bit slow due to a couple of things this summer. So, we need to make sure that happens.
Don't you hate when the citizens are busy during the summer?
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, the board really appreciates getting some early insight to those year-end results. Appreciate that. Great. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, administrative reports.
So we have 3 items on here. Nutrition service deficit discussion, and Rhonda's going to walk us through that conversation in just a moment. We have voter information feedback, which Ray Mann is here, and then we have a short, I'll do this just very briefly on the feedback opportunity process. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome and put her right on the spot already, although she's been on the spot for a bit long time and working with us. So welcome, Rhonda. She's going to give us a little overview of kind of the current, and again, accompanied by her other staff, both Irene and Lisa. We appreciate you being here as well. I have heard...
Nothing to do with the deficit. Actually, John, you were going to go over the deficit part of the second page of it, right? Or do you want me to?
I will. I don't want to dig into that too much. We projected that in the last few months, and
because I can tell you where we are going forward.
Right, that's what we'll handle that part. But I think the deficit is pretty much what we reported last report. There was some great effort in the high school, which I think could have been worse, especially from the high school. From April, May, the pasta bar that we talked about, but we're still facing what we've talked about in the past. So. Now we're moving ahead.
Now it's my turn.
Now we're moving ahead.
All right. Currently, actually, you had asked a question. We have currently saved about $130,000 between wage and benefit savings through attrition. We've actually had 3 full-time benefit employees that have moved on. We are not replacing those positions. One position was the van driver was replaced with a part-time person, which is a non-benefited position. And then we had 2 other full-time people that have also left that were replaced with part-time people that are non-benefited. We are trying very, very hard to regroup everything this year. We're going to basically staff the department more on production hours as opposed to actual positions. And we think that'll give us more flexibility and allow us some greater opportunities. We're going to concentrate on training the staff that we currently have with better knife skills, cooking skills, batch skills, move production from the central school, from this school down to the elementary schools as much as possible, so that the kids get fresher, fresher stuff. Cutting down on the need for the van driver and having to bring more people on. The biggest problem that they have is that, from a production standpoint, we're going to require some training to get them up to speed so that we can produce the number of meals that they have been doing with that, few less people. Plus, we plan on growing the sales. We're going to work really hard. We're launching a marketing campaign to change the website. We're going to have nutritional links for parents. to try to increase staff and administration participation, and we invite you to our cafeteria at any time. And we're also going to try to increase the school breakfast program, because right now the number is there. Those are the two weakest points. The lunch is actually, they've done pretty well. We have seen some declines, and I think we can get those back up there by getting the food actually prepared right there in the schools. What else are we doing that's exciting? It's all exciting.
Fresh Express.
Fresh Express lunches. One of the biggest concerns that we had is the ability to move the students efficiently through the lines. That was a big concern. A lot of kids would like to eat lunch, but they can't because they got 25 minutes and it takes them 15 to 20 to get through a line. So we're going to try to become more efficient in that way. So now we're opening up a Fresh Express, which is more like a grab and go. It'll include salad bar, soup of the day, and a pre-made sandwich such as a lobster roll, which, yes, we can afford to serve. So that faculty and staff and students can go through, grab a choice of two, and then move on. Instead of having to wait in a line and actually, be served. And do you want this? Because we do the offer versus serve program. We've spent a lot. We've lowered the price of the adult meals back down to $4. We have taken out the per pound charge for the salad bar. We felt that it's easier for us to control costs through what we put on there than to charge. Some folks will come through and get beans, which weigh a lot, but really aren't that expensive, and it drove the price of their salads up to $7 or $8, which prices us above a lot of the competition just down the strip. So we're trying to put those things in line. And we actually have spent a great deal of time the last couple of weeks redoing all of our recipes, food costing everything. Everything is now food costed. I believe that will save us another $10,000 to $15,000 a year, if not more. One of the biggest problems when the government changed all the guidelines is people that were in food service panicked because it was very confusing and they didn't know how they were going to do it. And so usually when that happens, you overreact and you offer way too many choices. And we're trying to pull that back in and say, instead of doing 23 things in hopes that they're going to get a reimbursable meal, we're going to do 10 things well, and they'll want to eat with us. And that cuts down the cost right there. I think we're going to see a lot more. We're in line just through, the $130,000 we've lost through attrition. We're in line to break even if nothing else changes. But I think with all the other positive changes that we've been working on together as a staff, that you'll see the sales increase, you'll see the costs go down, and I think we'll be in a much better position than just breaking even, but I'm going to be happy with that.
And I gotta say, some of our meals, this is a silly example, but potato bar. We cost out our current potato bar, it was costing us $1.50 per meal for just the main entree. With a few changes that are not gonna affect kids eating it, we were able to get it down to 80 cents per meal. So we took away the canned mushrooms, which do the kids really care about the canned mushrooms? Probably not. And we left their favorite things, but we took away some of those things and changed things. So we're not taking away their favorite things, we're just altering them.
And making it more nutritious. We are working a lot with local farmers. We just did on Monday, we processed how many pounds of
120 pounds of eggplants.
Oh yeah, it was
100 pounds of zucchini, 100 pounds of tomatoes.
Yeah. And
3 banana boxes full of basil.
That we're processing for use later on. Some of it we had to pay for, other stuff the farmers donated. A lot of the tomatoes were, had 1 or 2 bad spots, which was fine. We cut them off, we chopped them up, they're in the freezer. We'll add those to soups, stews, sauces. And we're gonna work on working really closely with the elementary schools and the food education and the middle school and the high school. We really wanna vamp up that program so that our department comes in line with the name you've given us. We're not food service department, we're the nutritional services department. So anything in this building that has anything to do with nutrition, we want to be able to play an important role in that and support that, either through use of our facilities, use of our knowledge, or just working together as a team. So we're really excited. I'm really excited about the changes. I think the girls are too. And the rest of the staff will find out some of these changes tomorrow. We'll let you know how that goes.
And I do want to say those foods were processed with volunteer hours.
Yes.
So they were not processed with staff hours, which is a big thing because a lot of times we can't get local foods because it costs too much in labor.
It makes it not cost effective. If you had to have, what we had seven
people for 2 hours.
Yeah. So to use our staff to process that food would make it not cost effective.
Rhonda, I wanted to just, item number 3, you talked a little bit, I just want you to address a little bit around the, kind of certified chef trainer.
Oh, yes. One of the biggest problems they have, and most of these girls, or the staff, is scared to death because they knew certain people weren't coming back. They heard that I wasn't planning on replacing them. And a lot of times they felt very stressed that they had all they could do to get through the end of the day and left here feeling drained. And so they're thinking, if we barely could get it done then, how on earth are we going to get it done now? So when you make changes like that, I think it's very important to support your staff with people that can come in and help and show them. Maybe if we do it this way, it'll save you 15 minutes. And if we set the line up this way, and proper knife skills, proper batch cooking, it benefits all of us. If you're going to make changes like that, you need to support the staff that is already in place. We have received an offer of a grant from Common Roots for $30,000. And it is basically an open-ended grant. We can use it for the chef trainer, which would be an independent contractor that would come in and work, not an employee of the district. It's intended to train the people that we currently have on staff, not to replace anybody or add another burden of another salary. And then there'll be additional monies through that grant that will help us replace some of the equipment that we need to use more fresh and local products instead of depending on a lot of the frozen products that we had currently used in the last years. So that's our plan there.
And I guess one question I have, Rhonda, thank you, that's, your honeymoon's over, I guess.
It's been over, it's been a month.
This is a little counterintuitive to some of the fact that we've been running a deficit, but you've mentioned training. Other than the chef trainer concept that you just described with the grant, have you identified other opportunities to provide training to the staff?
Absolutely. I also found out through going through personnel records and whatnot that most of our staff is not properly trained in food safety and sanitation. There's multiple ways to get that training. You can pay the state of Vermont $300 to come in and do a class all in one day. I've actually had great success with going through the National Food Service Management Institute, which is part of the USDA. They have a free online course. It's called Serving It Safe, because they can't use Serve Safe because that's a registered trademark. So it's free. It is an online course. And it covers exactly the same thing, but the person can do it at their pace. And what I found is that it helps them retain it better. Sometimes to sit in a group environment, if you don't understand what they're talking about, you don't always, bring that up, and it just goes right over your head. So, and then once you access that, you have access to that for years to come. You can go back and refresh. We're working with our liability provider, our who is it? The insurance company. I'm trying to think of the name of the company. Yeah. They're going to come in and actually work with, we've identified where our major need is as far as safety for workers' comp claims. Most of them in the kitchen for us are burns, and we need to determine, is it because we don't know how to run our equipment? Are we not providing them with the proper equipment to work safely? Are our oven mitts coming here when they should be coming here?
Is there not enough space between your oven and your table?
Yeah, exactly. What are the hazards? So I'm really spending a lot of time, although I will be honest with you, school's starting in a few weeks, and I had to back off on some of this because we do have to be able to put the food out the first couple of days. But we are researching training. I want an ongoing training for the department, how to lift, how to do this safely, to make us a better functioning unit and cut down on our workers' comp claims. And additional training. There's plenty of online courses that are just fabulous. Food costing, menu items, and how to make an effective menu and how to appeal to children. And we're going to really utilize those, as many of the free ones as we can. There's so much free stuff out there, there's no reason to spend a lot of money to bring somebody in to do a class every single time we need something. So that's what we're planning here. And if you guys have any suggestions on things you'd like to see us trained on, we welcome any and all suggestions. If there's a certain area you think we're lacking in, then we can certainly look into that and meet those needs as well.
We'll certainly be there to taste test.
Or if you like to chop vegetables.
Or if you like to chop vegetables.
Any other, thank you, I appreciate that. Questions, comments? Well, that's a great report, and just the fact that we're trending to break even this coming year is great progress already. One of the things I just quickly point out is I know this board has a little bit of sensitivity to grants and just making sure that we're not creating an obligation that the district might have. So I don't know anything about this grant, but would just highlight that we want to make sure that the grants support what the district's trying to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I think this is very much in line with that. We certainly, myself and John and Rhonda, have talked about that. And again, we think this is appropriately fitted. Again, there were some other ideas around that initially, I think, when the grant was emerging, but this was, I think, refocused, and it's certainly something that we think would be helpful. So, again, I appreciate Rhonda being here and welcome her on board, and certainly, nice to see Irene and Lisa also, nutrition service folks also here as well. So, thank you, Rhonda, Irene, and Lisa.
Thank you. Good. All right, we'll move on to the voter information feedback.
So actually, we're going to need to move a little better, turn a little bit, because it's going to show some things behind us. So I'm going to just kick this off a little bit. I don't know if the board members in the past have met Ray Knapp a lot, but he's our data person. He's been very much tied up in a lot of reporting at year end, so he's emerged to help with some of this. We have an ongoing need for the utilization of data to really tell our story, and currently actually in meeting with Stuart today, ongoing kind of needs are going to continue to emerge around how we use our data. That said, Ray's here to talk to us about voter information overview, and I want to commend him and thank him for his work. I also want to thank Martin. Martin has given a lot of time to this particular arena. We've met several times, and we've kind of narrowed down some things. We're not going to go through the entire report for you tonight. We're going to highlight some of the things. I also want to thank Donna Kindle, because she was also part of, and we met with her as well, and she provided a fair amount of information and dialogue to Ray about this as we really try to look at what does it mean to us. And again, I'm going to just finish with a couple more quick things, is that, part of our desire is to make sure our community is informed. And I think we've been lax of not really understanding, kind of the voter participation and turnout. And I think a good way to do this is look at the data and work backwards from that to say, what particular things can we do better? What types of communication might be better in certain areas of our community? What does our population look like? It's not just about getting the budget passed, it's about receiving information from our voters and appropriately responding with what we think is needed to continue to keep our community healthy. So with that said, Martin, did you want to add anything to that? We'll let Ray give us a quick overview. I kind of said 5 or 6 slides. Board members may have tagged another one that you want to question on. We'll try to keep it fairly short for you. So Ray.
We're going to go over this fairly quickly with some of the core slides. There's quite a bit of this background information. I'd just like to point out first, we do have a glossary up in the front of it, so if you have some questions, some of those may be answered right then and there. We have, if we go to slide number 6, we took a look at approval percentages for voters by year, by voting district, and broke those out And there are two events that we were dealing with. Also, we have a redistricting, and we also have the charter change. So we began with the charter change and moved forward. The redistricting was on July 1st of 2012. So you can see that the general trend here for approval is with a general upward trend. And depending on the district that you are looking at, it kind of gives you an idea and a background as far as how we're trending. We go to slide number 10. This is data that considers the parents, current South Burlington School District parents by district, and taking a look at the numbers of parents who we have been able to match up between our various data sources and seeing how those are trending over time. So you can see that we've got a general rise in those as well. So that gives you an idea what's happening with numbers. Slide number 11, total current South Burlington parents in the district over time. So this combines the numbers from the previous slide to show you the general trend is upward. So we have people who we've tagged in our system as either being in custody, a guardian, or living with a student, and the numbers are trending upward over time.
So is this saying there's more parents voting, or is it saying there are more
This is saying
parents as
eligible
registered
voters,
Right.
Okay.
which again,
That's not, I don't think that's quite right. This is reflecting the number of parents who are in our database, is it not?
correct.
So I mean, it's our database, and this was a mystery throughout this process for me, that our enrollment has been staying fairly steady, if not going down a little bit. But apparently we are doing a better job of making sure we capture the people who are guardians or parents in our database. It just doesn't make sense that there are all of a sudden more parents. But I don't think we still have the final complete answer to that mystery, at least that I've been satisfied with. But the way I look at it, the positive way to look at it, is that we're doing a better job of making sure that we have all of the adults who are associated with our kids in our database and able to contact them. So in the past, for whatever reason, we may not have been capturing everybody in our database, and we've been improving on that. At least that seems to be one possible story for what's going on.
No, I think Martin is right. In part, the position in which Ray occupies, we did not have before, and we did have uniformity around how our administrative assistants, for instance, were inputting data. Different terms were being put into certain fields in our schoolmaster, and so Ray's work and his predecessor, Brad Opperman, worked to streamline that. And I think, as Martin has said, it's likely that it's not that we are seeing an uptick, although it may be. It may be that we have some more children in the community that are being surrounded by guardians.
We have 4 parents.
Right, or may have a divorced parents in the same area. But again, as Martin said, we haven't been able to tease that out. But again, I think the right thing is that it's trending in the right direction, and we're going to keep working it.
It would seem that, part of our outreach should be making sure that we know everybody that we're trying to reach out to. And this seems to reflect perhaps that we have been doing a better job of doing that.
Is there a way to separate out so you're not counting parents more than once? So if you have children in multiple schools, you're able to,
Yeah, they aren't double counted. Yeah.
And one of the things that Brad, my predecessor, instituted was Schoolmasters Users Group. where we get together, try to get together maybe once a month with everybody in the different schools to become more consistent in the way that we collect our data, capture data. So this is good background material to kind of preface what we're doing. If we go to slide number 12, take a look at this. This is a look at participation by those who are listed as current school district parents. And if you take a look at the top line, those are people, the blue line, parents who are not voting. And the bottom line, red line, is the current school district parents who are voting. So our participation levels are increasing, which is what we want to see. We have the outreaches that we've been doing, and it apparently has been drawing more parents to get out to the polls.
Is it also fair to say that it's really a third of the eligible parents approximately that are voting?
It's
I'm kind of looking at 1,000 versus two.
The later numbers are about a third.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think your next slide shows the percentages actually. 13.
If we take a look at slide 13, and this is the percent participation, and this is the current parents versus other eligible voters, so against the general population. Right now, the percentage of parents who are voting is higher than the percentage of the other eligible voters. So it's
so we're on the cusp right here. You can begin to feel, and I will speak a little bit for Martin and Ray, is that there, as you can tell, there's a lot of information, and there was a lot more information that was collected. It becomes, what is it we're trying to be informed about? And again, I think we have the ingredients here about being informed and being mindful about how we move forward with communication. Mm-hmm. Again, both Ray and Martin have said, let's just kind of keep it at the low level here. But I think important for you to know is that this is really going to be important information for us to look at, work over time. Not just about budget, but it's about communication. It's about a lot of those things that we've been talking about on a regular basis around how to become a healthier city and school. And again, part of this saddled on enrollment projections and city population projections, and so there's opportunities you can begin to think around collaboration with the city on these issues, because this is a city school need.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what I take from this particular graph is kind of, we've had the last couple of years fairly significant efforts in trying to get the vote out. Not just within the schools, but necessarily that's our easier target audience. We can email folks who have contacts with the school, parents and guardians and such. But how much of that increase was from our effort versus, because you can see just the folks who are not in this parent group have also increased. And in fact, between 2011 and 2012, the participation increase was much higher than for parents. And even though we had started our effort in trying to get parents to vote and the rest of the community to vote, it's hard to say, is that because we were really successful in getting the rest of the community out to vote? I'm not sure if that's what we can draw from that. It's kind of hard to tease out exactly what is happening. How much is it because of what we've been trying to do, and are there other factors like the controversial issues that are bringing voters out? Okay. But nevertheless, it still seems that our efforts probably are in fact helping. We're almost at 40%, which still seems fairly low to me for folks coming out who have direct interest in school. But it's consistent with what's happening in the rest of the community.
Mm-hmm. I think as we move on, the ability to put more data around what were our efforts, right? Mm-hmm. So we did, a push on voter registration, absentee ballot, and we'd be able to list that kind of here. And then you know, if we do add one, we could essentially appropriately deductively reason that it had something to do with us, you know, doing a push and involving, you know, certain board members in additional outreach when we did. So you can begin to try to triangulate that a little bit. At this point, it's not particularly easy to tell the story of, you know, what were some of those things as we went along.
Going along with this slide, and this is really one of the core slides that you need to look at, slide number 16. This is percent of current parents voting by district. So this is, in essence, that previous slide that we were looking at, but it's broken down into the districts. So you can see that the distribution is not even among the districts. 7-1 is the blue line, and that is the district that seems to have the greatest level of participation. And then 7-4 is on the bottom. So this can, we can look at this and kind of target the efforts perhaps in certain areas. And we know that if we can get more people out in 7-4, it might help.
And 7-4 encompasses 3 of our schools, is that 4 of our schools, is that
primarily middle school as well.
Well, I'm looking at I'm not sure I'm looking at the guidelines on 3, but it looks like all 4 schools except Orchard are in 7-4.
Yeah.
But the students that attend those schools are not.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that's right, okay, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
yeah, they are relatively close to the borders of 2 of the other districts, 7-3 and 7-2.
And how would we characterize 7-1? That's sort of the Orchard, Shelburne, that whole, okay.
Right. Yeah, Orchard is right there.
No.
No. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, I guess a couple items I just want to point out that I thought was fairly interesting. Just raw numbers look nice to me as well. And looking at page 8, which we can go to real quickly, and that shows the margin of passing in 2013. 62%, which is the highest we've done at all, but it was 60% in 2012. Our worst was in 2009 when it passed by 6 votes. But then if you bounce ahead to page 15, that shows you your total number of voters. You know, we looked at some percentages, and it's still the I'll just for shorthand call it non-parents, even though they may be parents, just they don't have kids in school or at the time of the vote. There's still a lot more. You know, there's twice as many almost non-parents who are voting on our budget as parents, and we're. Yeah, I don't assume that every single parent is voting yes on our budget. You know, that's one thing that's missing is we don't know who votes yes or no. I would assume that the bigger percentage does certainly. But I thought that was fairly interesting, just those kind of raw numbers that, you know, this is a school budget that's voted for, and still, you know, half of the folks voting on it are non-parents, and we're still passing it by 60%.
I think this does wander into that conversation around our continued work with the city, around particularly involving our community in the processes of city government, city involvement, school, etc. And so I think, you know, Ray's work that he's put together, obviously along the margin, it may be an advantageous exercise for it to be also deployed at the city level, to be looking at this is what it tells you on your part, but what about our entire population, and what could we be doing also collectively. And again, you know, you've heard Dan talk about the involvement of steering committee in the past. There may be some avenues and options that we could, you know, to work on.
I think it's interesting, and just if I'm looking at it right, in 2009 the budget passed by 6 votes, but then in 2010 there was a drop in all voters. So less people actually came out the next year.
But the results of those that voted yes, outweighed those that no. Yeah.
It's interesting that dip in 2010. I wonder what to make of that.
Yeah. So I don't know, John.
There's some of that has to do with what's going on in the city too, the other side. You know.
Well, yeah, and I think that, you know, this, not to keep replaying that, but this gets at what we have talked about in the past. When the city has got a budget, for instance, that they're proposing significant increases, it has, you know, effects on us. If we're both trying to do major things, then it sends the community taxpayers into, you know, state of confusion. And part of that discussion that we've had before around the capital improvement plan and the 2020 is to really look at kind of the stacked effect of kind of our work ahead. But so I don't know, Elizabeth, if anybody has any other questions. Again, I want to thank Martin and Ray on their work, and certainly Martin's hours that he put into this, and greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I guess also if there are other ideas of how to continue this work, I mean, for instance, we could look at potentially some economic or tax data broken down by the different districts as well, just to try to maybe get at some of what's behind these voting trends and such. There may be additional things that we could end up doing. I mean, I don't know if other people, you can think about it.
Let us know. Yeah, we recognize you haven't had this. Again, Martin and Ray certainly have been dealing with this along with me quite a bit, but I think that your view would be helpful, you know, to see, tell the story for us.
Do we have a plan to share this with the city?
We haven't talked about that. I would like to do that. Again, I have administrative meetings that are coming up, and again, Stuart's going to look at me like, David, we can't pack anything else into those things. But you know, part of our work is to really share administratively. The second day of our administrative retreat is actually starting out with city management, city leadership joining us. It's kind of our business connections happening. So it's going to be with city manager, assistant manager, all the way down through fire and public works, etc. So this may be a topic that we talk about. I do think it's something we should talk, and maybe I can talk with you more, Elizabeth, about kind of our shared discussions with city and schools going forward. It might be really helpful to understand where there's some gains and where we can improve. So Ray, I want to thank you. I think it's safe to say maybe you're accompanied by somebody here tonight. Is that true?
My wife.
Well, welcome, and thank you for joining, Ray. And again, we appreciate you taking the time to do this work. Thank you, Ray. Thank you for coming.
You know, one of the things I find most encouraging about this is really the engagement of voters, because even though, like you said, Martin, you know, 40% may not be the ultimate target, that's a pretty significant improvement over some of the past voting records. So yeah, it's definitely trending in the right direction. So and it may be just the sum of a lot of efforts, but I think it's rewarding to see that there is some outcome and that people are engaging. And I think the continued reaching out is going to be critical. I think collaborating with the city is also going to be helpful. And then I think as we do think about maybe further granulating the information to better communicate or target information out, that would be helpful too.
And I think it's important to pat yourself on the back. I think that a lot of it has to do with kind of the cohesiveness of the board and, you know, the consistency that you've been working on trying to communicate and connect with the community. So I think you all have a part in that as well.
Yeah, this might be a good time to mention just to the board, I did reach out to Pam McKenzie, who heads up the city council, and suggested that she and I try to get a little bit of time on a routine basis to meet. And she made the suggestion as well that we include Kevin Dorn, David, and potentially Kevin's replacement when that person is named. Really just to have a mechanism not only for planning the agenda for steering committee meetings, but also to make sure we have an opportunity to have a little bit earlier identification of things like this kind of work that's going on within the school and the city, as well as some issues that may come up in terms of budget planning and the elections as well.
And just a quick update is that Kevin, you know, I have established a meeting times with him, and he did respond to me this afternoon with some dates. So I'll get back to you, Elizabeth, on kind of working together those dates.
Great, thank you.
the next administrative report is really just a dialogue with you around the feedback opportunity process. Again, that has been in play. It is part of our treatment of community. That's one of the components of evidence that's in there. That we established that was one of the reasons why we were non-compliant in the past. We did have a suggestion box, but it really wasn't, designed in a way that could receive and respond to. We have been keeping track of that data. One of the targeted areas that I had for WIN was to keep track of that, both WIN and Delina, and I would be able to provide it to you specifically tonight, but I don't have that. Again, Delina is away, and that transition as far as the data keeping as that comes in, I don't have with me at the moment, but we will. I think that there were some suggestions made, and I think Dan's going to come up when we talk about community treatment of community, that particular one. There's some areas of that collection that could be informative to the board. So anyway, I just want to summarize that I think that this is important, that people are aware of it. I think I need to continue to work to help people to be directed to certain areas. I don't want to circumvent that our offices and doors aren't open, administrative, teachers, administrative folks, central office, etc. But I also think that being knowledgeable of people's time and the best way to access, the technology also has played an important component. So since we put this in, we've definitely seen, we've had responses, and I have a protocol by which that happens. It comes in through Denise Mosian in our office, and then it gets sent to the appropriate person, and I get informed that we've responded, and then it goes into the our collection. So
questions, David.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking, is it the suggestion box that these are coming in? That was my first question. The second is, as we are about to begin another school year, how might that be an opportunity to communicate the process to families? I mean, I think we want to have it available for the community, but we do have an opportunity when school starts to communicate how feedback can be shared with the district.
Mm-hmm. So again, this is part of our conversation and to move forward, for continued, I think on a regular basis, we have this with our administrative, particularly at the retreat. What are the things that we can be working on? For me, that communication component and relationship development has remained, a major focus. You've heard me talk about that. How we communicate, what are the avenues in which people can do, we need to be really clear about that. I don't think it's necessarily effective for me to be pushing out a single email, as those often might not get read from the parents of a high schooler, but they would likely to be read when Patrick Burke puts it out and says, here are the methodologies or the ways in which you can communicate with us, and we welcome that feedback to include, the feedback opportunities process or all the others. So that may be slightly different than at the middle and the elementary, but I think it really needs to happen there, and it doesn't hurt for me also to be doing that on an occasion as well. So the answer is we will be working on how to continue to get out the message. There's a lot of things that we need to be actively communicating, and so we'll be working on that.
Well, I think of, at least in the elementary and some of the other schools too, with the handbooks at registration and the mailings that go home.
In that information packet.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, I'll make note of that, and again, this is part of our work ahead. You never can do enough, and I think all of us are saddled with a voicemail at home, the work, the email, and sometimes or a packet that comes home with a student, and you're like, I never saw that, but I happened to hear from a neighbor who said to remind me about something that came out from that. So all kinds of methodologies around doing that. So thanks for the idea.
One thing, David, on this feedback process, when we talked about implementing this, it was a mechanism to be able to identify where there might be recurring themes or trends that were happening. Is there a plan to report out on specific, like number of communications that have been received, and do they fall into certain categories? Is there any follow up to that?
I haven't done that, Elizabeth.
Okay.
I think that we're good at often doing that through kind of an analysis of when we have workers' comp. Is there a trend around slippery floors or poor lighting?
Yeah.
This has been fairly new.
Okay.
I haven't put those into categories, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to treatment of community. This might be an area where, and I'd be happy to do that, around kind of giving the categories, if you will, that are coming in are concerns. And a lot of these could be, budgetary concerns, or, back to the voting participation information. It's like we didn't get the information, or whatever the case may be. So I do think it's certainly possible. I haven't done it though.
Okay. Do we, just for purposes of this evening's discussion, do we have an order of magnitude? How many emails were received?
Yeah, I think in the last, since we put it in, I'm going to say probably 45.
Okay.
And some of those have been quick responders.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty low level things, to some others that led into, directing, back out to others. So. Okay.
All right. Any other comments on that? Great. We'll move to agenda item 8, and this is an action item on executive limitations policy monitoring on 2.3, treatment of community.
So I guess it's my turn to respond to that.
Welcome, Dan.
Some of these things have been touched on, but I'll go ahead and do it. Julie and I collaborated with David on this, but I don't think any of this is any surprise to him. In general, we found that and recommend that the board accept the report as being showing up sufficient evidence for being in compliance. But having said that, there are a number of things that I think it's one of these areas where I don't think it's open-ended. I think there's always room for improvement. The question is, are there areas that the board feels are really deficient? So along those lines, let me just say first, on the positive side, we'd really like to commend the board, David and the efforts that have gone on, and probably give a lot of the credit to the other paper itself, because there's it's very evident that in the past year or so there's been an uptick in the amount of information that's there, the breadth of information that's there, and the quality of information that's there. So we'd like to commend that effort. But having said that, we'd also like to put forward the idea for a discussion, or for just to think about for a while, as to whether there's room for there to become more proactive in putting out an explicit superintendent's, or perhaps even a board report through the voice of the chair as articles within the other paper on some periodic or quasi-periodic basis. I don't know whether that should be monthly, or at the beginning of the semester, the end of the semester, and the end of the year, or on some basis that acts to regularly connect the administration and the board to what's going on through that effort. We also looked at the roles of the PTOs and other student, parent, school communication systems. They seem to work quite well at the elementary level. It's not to say that there aren't places to be improved. Those pretty well. On the other hand, there seems to be weak evidence at best that they're working as well at the middle school. So we'd like to understand how that can be improved. And we talked here a bit about the suggestion and feedback processes. We think it's great that they exist now and that they're there. And along the lines of what we just talked about now, the question is, what's a sensible way for the board to get a sense of what's actually happening, what the intensity of that is, what the content of that is, what the results of that are. Is it effective? So we'd love to see something happen in that direction. We suggested to David, and he accepted it, that open items that were opened up in prior reports get closed as a part of this process too. So one of the things you'll see in here is that David has closed out the action from the prior thing, which was to establish things. I think that's important for the historical record, and I think that I would urge that be carried over into the other plans monitoring things too, because of just a general practice, just these things don't go there and then never end. They just And I think that's the essence of it. We sort of open it up to any other discussion anybody has. But so a couple of weak points we'd like to see improved on. A couple, none of them viewed as being critical and crisis at this point. A couple of places where we think a really very good job has been done, and a couple of places where we think there's opportunity that ought to be looked at for doing things a little differently, and perhaps a little better results.
I had a couple of questions. With respect to the evidence in the first page regarding middle school parents collaborating and the like, why was that material or that information removed? This is, I'm looking at the red line strikeout version. Also at the middle school, parents have collaborated with the administration, striving to maintain an ongoing process to improve communication, increase parent-guardian involvement, and foster relationships between home and school. That line in particular, was that removed because that's not happening? Because that is in fact my impression that that is not happening.
That's correct. It's not happening, but it's one of the targeted areas that, in relation to just the PTOs, it's the middle school has not. PTO has not been absolved, but it's not currently active. And again, this is one of the things of conversation that I had. So again, it wasn't.
When I said the evidence was weak, that was working.
Yeah, but I guess my point would be then, why should that be removed as opposed to pointing that out as a weakness in here? I mean that.
Well,
it's like, all right, here's where we're not doing well, so we'll take that out as
evidence.
Yeah, I'm wanting to articulate kind of the present situation.
A bit of that is Julie and my interpretation of what evidence is, and for evidence to us was a positive thing,
right?
Not a negative thing. A negative thing would be a deficiency that would get handled as
also just
some follow-on actions.
I'm sorry. When that was put in as evidence in the last report, there actually was, a grant and working with people. There was a specific committee that had been set up to collaborate that only existed for 1 year. So it's a piece of evidence. Last year it was a piece of evidence because it was programmatic.
Right, it was programmatic, but then it didn't really resolve anything. I mean, this is a bigger question about these kind of reports. Mm-hmm. I mean, am I only going to see the stuff that, well, this is working well? Well, what about all these things that are not working well? What about the counters? The counter evidence. And I think for a full report, we need to understand that the community outreach for the community of parents is not good in the middle school. You could still, I think, ultimately say not so deficient that there's not compliance, but I think there should be recognition in the report.
That's certainly consistent with the idea that we had about suggestions for places where things ought to be considered for improvement and that kind of stuff.
So I think
that would sort of suggest that we ought to just put in as sort of a headline item within the monitoring thing, known deficiencies and opportunities for improvement kind of a thing.
Well,
maybe somewhat short of an explicit action that we're expecting a definite response to.
So my response to that would, again, transparency is within the reporting of tonight, for instance. So the corrected version is provided that accepts the red line track changes, but my desire is to keep these connected, so any changes from the previous would be articulated. And I'm happy to inform kind of through the reason for compliance is that we are meeting what I would say our obligation. If you want to add to the monitoring report opportunities for improvement or things of that nature, I'm happy to add that. Again, I think in the area of communication, there could be a whole lot on the list.
There's really
but one in particular, again, and I responded to Dan on this, is that this is one of the conversations that I have currently, ongoing with Karsten and Paul Yoon for next year, is around, is it the PTO or should it be a different organization that developmentally, transitions from the elementaries to the middle school? What is that, and how to best do that?
It doesn't even necessarily have to be the PTO.
Exactly.
It's just that it's a recurring thing that I hear, that I've experienced myself. I mean, had a middle school kid, but not even so much that. It's recurring that I hear that there's just not good communication, and I'd rather not have that just not, I'd rather see that in the report saying, here is a problem area. Don't think it rise. I mean, here is a recognized big, I know you can't necessarily hit every single communication problem we are having with the community, but this is an ongoing thing that we've talked about again and again. And I think it should be in the actual evidence. Yeah, it should be in this monitoring report. I mean, I think that the negatives, the overall negatives, need to be there. The information you've considered, and then you ultimately made the decision that I find I'm compliant. If there's a whole bunch of stuff, I need to measure everything, not everything, but I need to measure what you were looking at to see if it was a rational decision. I mean, I need to see the bad and the good that you measured to see if I agree with your decision that it was rational when you said that there's compliance.
Yeah, I think the hard part is, I would like to have 100%. I don't have a metric necessarily that can view, the 100% participation on every particular communication topic that goes out. I mean, I'd like to get there. I have a desire to improve these processes and to listen. So I'm saying that I'm compliant. Opportunities right now, as I said, are, how do we continue to engage our community, our parents and guardians, and beyond, voter information on connecting our community. So I definitely have work to do here. It's probably in a different area, though, than in the monitoring report. I'm struggling with that, Martin. I'm not trying to be oppositional. I don't really know how to cite a deficiency, other than I don't really think I can say I'm non-compliant. I think I'm providing, evidence that we're working to reach out. We do have a PTO, although not very active. That may be a function of just developmental age for kids that, and moms and dads are in a different phase, or a variety of others. We're not very approachable. We don't have, appropriate activities for parents to provide feedback. So,
well, I guess, but I'm really looking at this more on a policy governance level, and a general monitoring report. Should it just come out and say, here's the evidence that supports my conclusion I'm compliant? Well, what about all the evidence that doesn't support it? That, you still can make the ultimate decision that despite all these other bad things, I am compliant. But then it's the whole.
What are you going to do now?
The whole record is before us.
Yeah,
when we're reviewing your decision,
I think Martin's point is it's not a monitoring report that exclusively highlights only the areas in compliance.
Only the areas that support the conclusion that I'm in compliance. So that
one improvement I see, and this has been an ongoing issue, and I think your interpretation is accurate. I think, personally, I guess I'd have an issue based on the subcommittee's work. Do we really want to say that under the evidence where we say inclusion in program activities, do we want to call the middle school out? Because it sounds like we're not doing that. This says our PTOs are very active with supporting and enriching the elementary and middle school experience for our children. And I think I'm just hearing that's not true of middle school.
That's not true.
Or less
I
true.
don't know about that.
Yeah.
It happens, but happens differently.
Right.
And just, if I could put my parent hat on for a moment, I know the struggles of the middle school PTO and having morning meetings, afternoon meetings, evening meetings, and the heroic efforts that went out to outreach to get new people to be on board and take over. And I think that there's still some support for programs, but they're not actively meeting. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it does enrich. I misspoke if I mentioned it. No, I think the PTO, which is just less formal of an organization, but there are some people who are very hard on doing things, and they have done a lot of good things. But still, it's the next part that's excluded. That's my bigger issue with the whole communication with community. Inclusion and communication with the community that is in this particular monitoring report is an item that I see on here that I say, well, this is kind of a negative. This doesn't support that.
Taking that out.
And you've taken that out, but it gives me the bigger picture that I think in monitoring reports we need to see the bad, the good, what you considered as evidence that was before you, and then you decide despite some of the negatives, on balance, I'm in compliance. And I probably don't disagree with your ultimate conclusion, but I want to, I understand
expand the evidence to be a little more articulate.
I think it's the evidence that was before you to determine whether there was compliance, and there's probably going to be positives and negatives for all these different things. And I think that should be down as evidence.
I don't have a problem, of articulating in the evidence kind of the expulsion of that information. It would be wrong, again, how I feel, it was wrong to keep it in because it was past actions. But it certainly, in taking it out in evidence, says that a concerted effort was put forth in the previous year through a grant. And, we're at now a place where, we still have engagement, although it's a concern, and that's, something that we'll be looking at.
It's sort of like, include the positive and the negative evidence and then assess the evidence for compliance, basically.
And the point I was going to close out on it really was asking for some clarification on the revised language, was that one of the challenges we've had is where we anticipate or would desire some evidence that doesn't exist right now. So it's sort of, it's the subcommittee's recommendations, basically, that I don't know that we have. I know we've tried to capture those in a working document. I'm wondering if an improvement to this process would be including the comments of the working committee as an attachment.
Yeah, like here's an example.
So that it becomes the working document for the next go round.
Yeah. So here's an example. So this is just under this one. It has been revised, and this is from Julie, and Dan. It happens to be Dan on exactly what he's just talking to you about. So that could be, again, I'm not opposed to working some of that, being more mindful of something coming out into the evidence, but also the working committee, so that informs the process for the upcoming basis.
And did that issue, Martin, get covered in the working committee's recommendation?
I'm not. Yeah, I think from what Dan was saying, it's just that what disturbed me was that it was all of a sudden not here. And I know in other reports there's good and bad stuff reported as evidence, and you make your decision. But usually the only time I see bad evidence, evidence that would be countered, are in those situations when you say I'm non-compliant. It's not those times where there is some bad that's going on in this particular area that we're supposed to be monitoring, but overall I'm still compliant. And that's kind of what.
Gotcha. I'm fine to work to it. We can bring this back.
So I've heard a couple of different avenues to approach this mentioned here, and I think we ought to try to get to one as a preferred way of doing it. One way would be to include in the evidence, make sure there's both positive and negative, and perhaps even delineate them as the pro and the con. That's one way. Second way David suggested was, if there's sort of a minority report that comes from the review committee, to append that to the thing as a thing. I mean, personally, I would prefer that it get documented in the evidence itself as plus and minus. And then on balance, a judgment call
for compliance.
And where it is, and then, okay, do we concur with that or don't we concur with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. As far as attaching minority, that would put
undue
more onus
pressure on the committee,
more on the subcommittees to then write up something, instead of just reporting out during the meeting. So I think the pro con thing, if there are pros and cons, and it may not always be the case, but.
So it sounds like we want to postpone taking action on this, and would ask David that you incorporate the revisions into an updated report.
Well, I have a second one, which I promise is going to be a little quicker, since Julie's not here to poke me, and we just went a minute over.
You are the timekeeper, Martin.
No, I declined to take on. In the item about access to facilities, I didn't see any mention on why. I'm just throwing this back to you since you looked at this report again. Whether there should be a mention of the fact that within the last year or two, the district has started charging people for the use of facilities. And I've had a lot of comments come back to me from all of a sudden getting a bill for use of baseball fields when they hadn't been used before. I think that should be addressed in here, that you've started doing this, and has there been any effect or any on usage by the community of the facility, because it's de minimis. I think it's completely reasonable. I have no problem with the fact that the district is charging, but it seems like that's something that should be mentioned in here for access to facilities, because it was not major, but it was definitely a different way that we're dealing with the community and accessing facilities, including fields, rooms, and schools, etc.
Okay.
All right, so we'll revisit this.
Thanks.
Can I just make a comment?
Actually, Lisa did have a
Yes. Oh, sorry, Lisa.
That's all right. About the engagement, just as a parent comment and what I went through personally, my engagement level was, at a certain level in the elementary school, and as my kids transitioned into middle school, my engagement with the PTO went down, but the engagement with the individual teams went up. And with someone who's got a limited amount of bandwidth, making choices, I was more inclined to support my kids' teams because that affected them directly as opposed to PTO, which benefits the school population. So as you look at engagement at the middle school, there is a tremendous amount of engagement at a team level. It's just not, kind of that umbrella PTO level. I just wanted to compliment.
And also there's a tremendous need as an elementary school parent to reach out and meet other parents, which you've already done by the time you get to middle school. So now you just want to support your child and you're not interested in going out as much and meeting those other parents because you already have those relationships established. And I think the PTO is where a lot of you parents came in elementary school to make those relationships with other parents that they didn't know.
Well, that's helpful feedback. Again, there may be still opportunities around how we can engage and connect and inform, that I need to look at. So again, appreciate the feedback.
Thanks. All right, we'll move on to setting the agenda for the August 21st meeting.
So I want to add, we'll see them in your announcements. I do want to add an AYP report, and I would like to put on here SBAA agreement action. I think would be appropriate.
Would the AYP be just part of the superintendent's report?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit longer one. I don't want to take up a ton of time, but I think it's important information, particularly around where we are. Currently, as you know, and we'll say this a little bit in the announcements, but information's come out, and so I kind of want to let you drill down a little bit more and analyze that a little bit. So I'd like to add that.
So our question on number 7, is Steve and Dale coming? Do we know?
Right now, we have a request out there. We're trying to get Steve to this one. Not going to make the next, maybe the 7th is his.
So are we going to do the legislative update and impact when we have him? Wasn't that the idea?
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't want to. I'll amend the agenda. We should hear from him soon. I hope around that, and so we'll
that
add
may
that
come
in
off.
if we need to. Yeah.
Okay. And will we be ready to review 2.3 again? Oh, it's on here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if we didn't need it, so we'll keep that on.
You
I didn't anticipate that. Well, that's not
good.
Elizabeth, I'd like us to think about how we're going to be responsive in the context of the steering committee. Okay, I think I heard you mention earlier that you reached out to Pam McKenzie to try to get that going a little bit, but I think we need to have some, at least however brief, discussion about what issues we think are important. So a few of those things at the last steering committee were pretty eye-opening to me in terms of where the city was thinking about 4 or 5 years out in terms of some of the municipal facilities they were dreaming about getting, and with some pretty large price tickets associated with them. I think that's a relevant discussion for the school district to be involved in too. Among other things.
Yeah, I mean, part of the dialogue that I anticipate, again, Kevin's an interim, but he and his staff and some of my critical staff meeting with him on a more regular basis. My hope, again, and I think with Elizabeth and I connecting with both Kevin and him, I think we will take and shepherd the desire to solidify kind of it.
I'm just suggesting that we have a brief discussion to make sure we're all together on where the priority of the efforts ought to go.
Is that something?
I think we made some good progress in terms of putting some defined meeting points in place, which has been a weakness in where things were before.
When is the next steering committee scheduled for you?
I don't know off the top of my head, I'll have to let you know.
So, would it be okay, Dan, if we get this on one of our agendas before the next steering committee meeting then?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it needs to go on. I think it needs to be, some of these things are not that urgent but I think they're important, and we just need to find room for them.
So let's put that on future agenda item and try to get it scheduled prior to the next steering committee meeting. Any other suggestions for the August 21st agenda?
Something for David, I think. David,
Something I forgot, Mr. Stewart?
I believe so. We've had some discussions with the city about the past due.
Oh, custody school cost sharing, yes,
Yes.
that's right, that needs to be on there.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll have.
Under your report, or?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered on the future agenda items, do we think those are, we can take off voting data? Do we want to keep nutritional services deficit on there? I mean, we did have a report on that tonight.
I think you could take those off, it's really up to you. Because now we have some in play kind of reports that are going to come to you. My only hesitation to that, like voting data, as I said earlier, a lot of you haven't had a chance to dig into it. So you may want to bring it back, and part of the dialogue that we just had, whether it becomes like voter information, might become a steering committee topic or something of that nature. So I don't really know. In some ways these are placeholders, but I know some of you look at them and it's like, they never come off, we never do anything, we don't get them done. So.
Well, I think we, when we've planned the annual agenda, we take these off and then put them on the big calendar and have reports out on them. Unless we have another question, I think we can sort of take them off unless, we need, say the voting data, we want to talk about that again at budget planning time, then we can bring that back. But I like to have this and see that we're making progress.
You like checking things off?
I like checking things off.
Let's just make sure we give you something to cross off.
Thank you.
I think that's a fair observation, but in respect to nutritional services, I think the reason why they got put on the agenda was to give some focus to the fact that it's running a deficit. And while there's some good effort going on, some direction that hopefully we're going to improve that, if we're really concerned about the deficit, I think we need to at least get the 2-minute thing that says, and last month the deficit was, or to see what, until we're satisfied with the momentum.
There is a requirement
Until the
for
momentum.
monthly reporting on it.
Monthly report was what we
Yeah.
said we would ask for.
So I do think it doesn't necessarily have to be a future
It
agenda
doesn't-
item,
it
because
doesn't
it
have
will
to
be
be
a
a,
monthly
you know,
report.
in depth, like
plus we have some of these
indication.
enterprise fund
Like a
reporting.
recurring.
Yeah, just like the snapshot budget thing was, just.
Yeah. So just to reiterate that there is an expectation.
And then if it doesn't look like it's going in the right direction, we can say, okay, time to spend some more time.
And that was the
If it
intent.
is going in the right direction, we can slow it back off and say, okay, we'll wait a quarter this time before we really go.
How about calendar 2.0?
Yeah, so you remember, again, it's going to be in your announcement packet.
Mm-hmm.
There's some forums that are going to be happening. I talked to you quite a while ago, actually did a quick overview. I think we were a little foggy with a lot of other things going on. I talked to you about kind of the rollout and the purpose of that. The School Boards Association and the Superintendent's Association have definitely gotten behind it with some more traction. I am due to respond to them to sign up for participating and helping communicate kind of the desired outcome of a calendar 2.0. And I think I'm probably delinquent with you folks in revisiting kind of the main intent and purpose and kind of the move forward direction. So we could add it on here. It was in your announcement packet, which I think, I was going to just touch on that a little bit. Some of it's for your own involvement, but it's also, I think, resurfacing, what we should be doing in that regard around communicating.
Yeah, I don't know where the rest of the board stands, but I think this should be on a future agenda item, and I know, based on what I'm hearing, we should have venues for community feedback on that.
It's good.
That's the one issue that methadone.
Calendars and methadone.
So anyway, we'll put it on a future agenda. Maybe more timely that it gets bumped up once you get a chance to read some of this stuff.
And then I guess we should go ahead and put the direct inspection RFP for a future agenda as well.
On the calendar 2.0, is there actually a place that's been identified yet, David? Because I'm looking at the dates for that, for the Chittenden County Forum, and it has the dates but not the location.
I think the dates, the locations are starting to be established. So I'm not positive of that they're all done, but again, I'm happy to help get that out. A lot of them are unfolding about open meetings for people to attend. They're trying to formalize that. And again, as I said, I'm delinquent in responding to participating in some of these presentations on behalf of superintendents and other school board membership kind of things. So I will find out what the locations are, Diane, and update the board on that.
And then the crisis planning, do we want to keep that on there as we move forward?
That's one that
you're having a meeting.
Yeah. That's one that kind of should probably reoccur from time to time, but I don't know how you want to handle that. It's always kind of in front of us. It's a compliance issue. It's a ongoing need. I don't know. It's up to you on whether you want to keep it on for future agenda topics. Do you want to work it into our annual calendar? I mean, I don't know that you want to talk about it every single time. I don't know.
Why don't we just keep it on future agenda item for now and just see what's appropriate. Okay. Anything else? Looks like we have a meeting.
On this agenda for next time is also board self-evaluation. Are we doing that every meeting or first or second?
That's supposed to be other, and it's on today, so it should not be on for August. That can come on. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it shouldn't be today, one or the other.
That's your choice.
Let's take it off today. We'll amend that agenda since Mrs. Beatty can't be here.
Yeah, and I think we did it last time. I think we did.
Oh man, so we'll keep it on for the next one.
Well, I'm diligent about setting those, and we rarely not.
I know she
probably
miss it, so
Okay.
So we'll take it off this one. We'll keep it on that one.
Okay. Okay. I think we've talked about future agenda items, unless anybody else has anything else to add here. So we'll move to the consent agenda. And it looks like, David, do you want to run through the...
We're supposed to be doing the minutes first.
Oh, did I miss that?
Yeah, it's right on the bottom.
Oh, here, sorry. I've got meeting minutes from July 5th first. Any comments, changes? By consensus, those are approved. And we had some revised meeting minutes for July 10th that went out a little bit later to the board.
I have one, I think, quick change on page 2. The second paragraph under the Methadone clinic starts Mr. Malone. The last sentence says, or the last bit says, define school safety zones and non-conforming structure uses. If you could just strike structure, I'm pretty sure I would have said structure because it's just non-conforming uses.
Any other changes? So with that change, those minutes are approved. And now we'll move to the consent agenda.
So I don't really, again, I provided you the new hire report also, just kind of within the, providing some guardrails around the budget. The administrators have been working hard to try to stay within the, kind of my guidelines. We're happy to report that we're hiring individuals, I think, that are going to be vibrant and effective for our students. You see Tuttle Middle School, the high school, are the primary ads here for these employees. So again, a little late in the process, but some of these, again, we're excited to have them on board.
And these will all be one-year contracts?
Currently, that's right. Anyone after July 15th is a one-year non-renewable contract, which I do communicate with them. In some cases, if those positions remain open, they are informed that the position will be reposted, and the process will happen again. If they've been doing a good job, obviously they're a strong candidate for the continuation of that position. But they're all informed of that at the time of hire.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented by administration?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The consent agenda is approved, and we'll move to agenda item 13, and this is approval of a revised resolution on AP order payments over $50,000.
Basically, this, corrects our current organizational structure, primarily.
And how did this get revised? Because I thought we had looked at this once before.
Yes.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the revision is on the second page in terms of administrators that would be named specifically. Do I have a motion to approve the revised resolution on AP order payments over $50,000?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Thank you.
Looks like on agenda item 4, we were given AP orders number 2 and 4. I think there were some individual board questions. Have all those questions been adequately responded to? Sounds like they have. And we're skipping the board evaluation announcements, David?
Yes, so you have those at your place, one of which we just talked about. Let me just quickly go through those. Again, the proposed 2.0 calendar, I won't go into any more detail, but I would certainly appreciate you just reading over that, and I'll do a better job of getting out additional information and bringing that back to a future agenda item. It may be sooner rather than later, just because of the kind of the timeline to bring you back up to speed on where we are. There's a piece here around the Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust invites you as board members to the regional meetings, and there's some information on that for those upcoming. The legislators and school officials are invited to attend a Public Assets Institute. Again, I have enjoyed going to those. They're often informative to kind of the current status of economic related issues, and I've enjoyed going to those. And Paul has been, again, part of this has been dialogue with he and some of his other staff around reaching out to board members around what I would say really helpful information. So I'm happy to see that. I've included that. The Agency of Education has released the adequate yearly progress, is what I talked to you about, and Stuart, I kind of asked you to give a real quick snapshot, just so you can walk away with kind of a quick, where we are. But again, the idea is we'll come back next meeting and do that. So Stuart, I don't know any.
Well, I mean, there are no major shifts except that the high school made adequately yearly progress in math. So it's a 2-year process. There's still an improvement, but it means that the first year of improvement again, instead of going into the second year of improvement. All the other schools are more or less status quo, but we'll go into the details of that. Some categories shifted here and there. Both Orchard and Chamberlain, which last year was identified also for math all students, actually made adequately yearly progress in math for all students. So overall, some good results. Obviously, the planning and the improvement stuff that we're doing, is starting to take some effects.
I think one of the important pieces is that the cut score and the target are continuing to go up. And as you know, under adequate yearly progress, it reaches to an essential outcome of 100%. And so obviously those of you who are knowledgeable about trying to get 100% is likely difficult. Doesn't mean that we should be working to an appropriate end. I think the other part is around the high schools. High schools in the state of Vermont currently, how many are currently, you gave me this earlier, Stuart?
Well, no, I gave you the whole school. I mean, there are 84 schools that are not in that have made AYP, including our high school and Central. So actually, we have 2 of the 84 schools that have made adequately yearly progress in the entire state.
And 84 out of how many?
I think the school number is somewhere in the 300 range, could be more than that.
I mean, I think the other part of this is, and again, we'll go into this, we'll end this, but the end number has to be greater than 40 in any one of these categories. If it's less than 40, then you're not identified. And so there's likely, I don't want to go too in depth to say, but there's likely to be a good number that have not been identified because they don't have the N number large enough or greater than 40. So that said, I mean, it is what it is. Important for us to stay focused on what we believe are appropriate and realistic outcomes for us.
Yeah, I mean, one last thing. I mean, everywhere we're identified now is a subcategory that's greater than 40. We have no more identified for all students, which we did in 3 of our schools in the past. So I think that's a...
Again, I asked Stuart to do this just because it's likely some of you have already gotten some questions. Armando was on, I think, last night maybe, just talking snippets about that as it was a release. So again, I just want to thank you, Stuart, for doing that. And the last piece that I have on here, Sue Luck is out on medical leave. She's will be out, actually has been out since July 31st. She'll be returning on the 11th, and I have reached an agreement with Bob Goudreau, who is a recently retired licensed administrator, actually began his career at Rick Marquette Central School, little did I know, as a teacher a good number of years ago, but he will be basically filling in during this period. He'll be a licensed administrator. Really, I thought a lot about how to cover this, and again, I think this will be appropriate. Again, I'm very mindful about kind of the startup of a year, but I'm very mindful about needing a licensed administrator there on a minute-by-minute basis, and certainly I have confidence that he'll assist me in that way. Again, we will welcome Sue back, and again, everything I hear, things are going fine at the moment for her. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Is Bob on board now?
Bob will not be on board until I have him coming on board. I'm going to say the 19th or something of that of August. So again, really the onboarding for him is really just the kind of what I'm going to say the logistics of the building. There's a fair amount of other delegated duties that have happened just on the opening and schedules and things of that nature. And Sue certainly is available by email, but again, not in present form. So anyway, I just wanted to keep you posted on that. And information has gone out to staff, and information will go out to parents, as well around the startup here. So I just wanted you to be informed about that.
As you get the locations for the school calendar 2.0 out, David, could we also get the locations for the regional VSBA meetings, because those were not included? And we usually try to attend the Winooski meeting. Yeah, and I assume that's probably where it is, but
yeah, I didn't see it.
I didn't see the details, but the date and the location, that'd be great. Any other announcements? Okay, unless there's any other comments, I will take a motion to adjourn, and we're going to shift into a brief executive session to discuss a collective bargaining issue that otherwise would be disadvantageous to the district. Motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And we're adjourned. Thank you all.